You talked about playing with lots and lots of clubs. I feel like, particularly for sports like football and for basketball and for cricket in Australia, the ones that are liked by other people around the world, unlike the footy, that moving around and being able to adapt in multiple countries is a huge part of it. I've never met anyone who's done that for a career, and I'm genuinely curious about it. How is that?
I think that I wish I prepared myself more, but I kind of just went as like a 19-year-old kid to Spain.
Jeez.
I literally bought like Spanish for Dummies, and I was reading it as I was boarding the flight. And I was like, I'm going to learn it on the flight. I'll be chill. I land and I'm like, nah. So it was tough. It was definitely tough. I tried, like when I went to Japan, I tried learning Japanese beforehand. That was a whole different level. The symbols and the everything.
There's a clear language barrier, obviously.
I chose the hard options.
Yeah. Like, how do you do? You just hope for the best?
A lot of nodding. A lot of like the hand movements help. And then I guess with the football stuff, you're like, okay, common sense, stand at the back of the line, watch what the people are doing in front of you. And then you slowly start to pick up on a few words here and there. But the ways that I learned best was like if you could, relate it to something in life. So like something happens in the moment and you're like, oh, okay, that's what that word means. Instead of like sitting there studying, trying to get that going. So I needed to like really ingrain myself in the culture. But the first year I was too scared to do that.
When I was 19, I moved to Ballarat.
I mean, that could have been...
Yeah.
From Melbourne?
Yeah. They speak another language there, but it's not Spanish.
That's pretty far.
Did someone look after you?
No.
What happened?
I rocked up. I genuinely, I think I was just so oblivious and was like, I'm signing for a big club. This is going to be so cool. But women's football wasn't that advanced. So it was a bit like, I rocked up. They sent me a photo of the guy who was picking me up. It looked like the most generic Spanish man I had ever seen in my life. I have no internet. I'm holding this picture up. It looks like a mugshot. And I couldn't find him for an hour. And then I find the guy. He's like holding a phone up, a picture of me on the other side. We find each other holding each other's faces. And then he's just like, he just takes me home. And I'm like, I don't even know where I'm going. And I'm going to this apartment. Apparently I'm living with another teammate. As I arrive, the teammates decided she doesn't want to live with anyone. So she's moving out. And I was like, that's sad.
That's really sad.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, cool. And I lived close to a giant mall, so I could at least go to the shops. Once again, I hadn't like no money. I had like a little Travel-X card, and I was like, okay.
Travel-X.
I bought some grapes. Like, I was like, this will get me through the night. I don't know. I need to get through the first night. They're like, oh, do you want to come to training? And I was like, I just got off a flight. I don't think they understood like where Australia was.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, sure, we'll go to training. Like, they're like, meet in the basement. What do you mean? So it was like the initial bits of moving to Spain. I was like, what is going on? It was really in the deep end. No one really there to help you. Some of my teammates knew a bit of English. So I had an Italian teammate and a Portuguese teammate that like got me through that whole season. We all would speak English to each other. They would try and help me with my Spanish. But yeah, like absolutely oblivious, trying to figure it all out on the fly. After the World Cup, man. So during the World Cup, like towards the end of it, we just kept going, right? So it's like, once we're in like the knockout stages, you don't know, like you're on a flight the next day. So we come up to like a quarterfinal, we're like, or the round of 16, it's like we could be like gone the next day. So I was working out contract stuff at that time, like where I was going to be playing next, which was, I didn't know. I was meant to be going back to the US, and the coach was kind of like, well, you come back here, you're not going to play. And I'm like, I kind of want to play. It's kind of what I do for a living. Yeah. So I was looking for alternative options, and then we came up with Mexico out of absolutely nowhere. And I'm like, am I moving to Mexico? But none of that was sorted until the day after the final. So like we get knocked out, I'm in limbo, and I'm like, well, I'm a fan, I'm going to go to the final. So I go to the final. The next day I meet up with my agent. He's like, yep, so Mexico's going to happen. And I was like, cool. 4 days later, I'm in Mexico. So I couldn't even debrief the whole like World Cup situation.
Yeah, you don't get to have that moment.
No, there was no break. It was like straight back into it, and the season's already started. So I was like, okay, I'm like right into this. And then Mexico. So like it was a loan from the US with like basically it was kind of complicated, but my agreement then ended in the middle of that loan with racing. So then it became fully contracted with Tigres, but then that contract ended at the end of the year anyway, and then I had nothing.
Yeah.
So I was like, I got 3 months left of like playing overseas, and then I figure out my next steps.
When you're flying that much, are there moments where you just like, if you sit still for a minute, then everything just washes over you? Or like I feel like when we come back from tour or something, it takes a few days and you go, holy shit, like what's just happened for the last 12 months? How do you deal with that? Or do you not deal with that?
I journal a lot. So I definitely have a book in there somewhere. Like I could definitely write a book with all these journals. Because a lot of the time I write on planes to kind of process.
The friendships, like everywhere you go, you're going to a place that would be selling themselves as we're a family here, we look after the players who are here, and then is that the case? If that's
the only time that's been a case would like where everything has kind of gone as it said has been Victory. Like,
perfect.
So it's good that I'm here now and I've signed longer with them. But yeah, everyone they sell you on absolutely everything, you know, like before. So like I had a bit of a rough time in Spain and I was very like cautious, like, do I want to go overseas again? Japan came up and I was like, I've always wanted to play in Japan. But I need to make sure they actually want me for me. So I had like 3 or 4 meetings with the coaches, the staff there. Everything they were saying was checking my boxes. I had no reason to like not want to go. And then I arrive after the 2 weeks hotel quarantine and then like, okay, we're going to play as a left wing back position that I've never played before. Like, I was like, where did this come from? And then they look at me, they're like, you're shorter than we thought. I'm like, you had my stats. You had my height and everything. You know, like, it was kind of similar when I went to Atletico. They're like, they didn't know I didn't speak Spanish. I'm like, where was your assumption that I spoke Spanish? Like, how much do you actually know about me?
So you like
with the people that are signing? Like, there was a massive disconnect with a lot of it.
That must be immensely frustrating.
Yeah, you show up and you're like, you gotta be kidding. And then I was contracted for 2 years. So, and I'm like trying to, you know, make it back into the national team at this point because I'd been dropped yet again. And I was like, well, how am I meant to do that not playing? And if I do play out of position.
Or out of position,
like, so I'm like, I don't really know what I'm meant to be doing here.
Is it like this for everyone though? Men and women in every league across the world?
There would be similar stories, I would say. Like, it's hard because, you know, I think like with social media, you look at it and it's like, you wouldn't tell from my social media that I've had these experiences. So like I had a big issue with social media when I was in Madrid because I was like, I'm meant to be like super excited that I've just signed for like one of the best clubs, a club that I've been a fan of for ages, and I do not feel the way that I thought I was going to feel. I'm sitting on the bench, I'm miserable, but I'm watching all the other girls I grew up playing with having like the time of their lives. So I had to like step away from social media, and like since then my relationship with it's been very different and very controlled. But it's like, it's tough because there's not a lot of stories out there where you see the behind the scenes, like the disappointment, the lack of communication that there is at club level. Even at international level, just not getting like basic answers. Like, you know, what can I do to be playing? Like, so, you know, there were some like culture things that I had to learn as well. So in Japan, I tried to be really respectful, like, you know, bowing, making sure I'm saying the right things. And, you know, everywhere else I've been, when you ask like for feedback, ask for advice, you know, they'll sit down, they'll give it to you, they'll do video with you, great. In Japan, I kept asking and like I wasn't getting anywhere. We had a translator as well. And I was like, you know, like what's the disconnect here? Like, why am I not playing in the midfield? All this kind of stuff. And then I find out that I've been extremely disrespectful because you're not meant to ask those questions to a male figure, basically, who was our coach. So they're like, you've just been disrespecting him this whole time. And I'm like,
how are you supposed to know that?
Yeah. So like that's the feedback that we gave to like the people who started the league of like, you know, if you want to have internationals come to the league, you need to explain all these things, but also coaches have to be able to adapt to internationals. It kind of goes both ways. And so we were the first like 7 internationals at this, like, you know, in the new league in Japan. And like a lot of us, like, you know, we got on really well. We all gave feedback and stuff. And the chair of the league was incredible, you know, like really, really receptive. But yeah, you've got these guys in charge that very traditional, just wanted to play. I think like I felt like I was just a token player, you know, like, oh, look, we've got internationals. They didn't play hardly any of us. Like all 7 of us that like had come from good clubs, really good players, all not playing in the league. Like, what's the point? Like,